Let me start by saying I've always been a calm guy. The kind of guy who keeps his cool when someone cuts him off in traffic or when a neighbor's dog won't shut up at 3 a.m. But when I found out my wife was cheating on me, let's just say the idea of seeing red isn't just a cute metaphor. Turns out, it's a pretty literal description of my living room walls after I bit through my own cheek and screamed like a lunatic. But let's rewind a bit. It's been 2 weeks since I found out, and I'm still lost, adrift in some cocktail of rage, heartbreak, and self-loathing. The signs were there, sure. Little red flags popping up like weeds, but nothing solid enough to grab onto. When I finally confronted her, she acted like I'd accused her of committing war crimes. The sheer audacity of her indignation convinced me faster than a confession would have. She went full Broadway on me, tears screaming the classic, "How dare you accuse me of such a thing?" That's when I knew. Snooping didn't yield much. Her phone and laptop were squeaky clean, which should have been its own red flag. Nobody's browser history is that saintly. So I did what any desperate man would do. I went full spy mode. Tiny cameras, hidden in places even I forgot about. Side note, best $100 I've ever spent. Then I gave her the rope she needed to hang herself. I took a weekend trip to visit friends, giving her a golden opportunity. Sure enough, when I got home and reviewed the footage, there she was, getting cozy with her coworker Marcus. Yes, that Marcus. The guy we've had over for dinner. The one whose wife has sent me Christmas cookies. They were doing things on my couch that would have gotten them banned from the internet. At first, I froze. I stared at the screen like it was a bad episode of reality TV. But then it hit me, all at once, like a freight train of rage. I didn't just lose my temper, I annihilated it. The bedroom door? Gone. I kicked it so hard it obliterated the glass table in the living room. My fists did more remodeling than an entire season of HGTV. Blood sprayed the walls when I screamed, and I didn't even notice I was the source. Somewhere in the chaos, I hit my head, and it snapped me out of the meltdown. That was the moment I realized two things. First, I needed to get the hell out of that apartment before she walked in and became a true crime statistic. Second, I'd never felt anything remotely like this before, and that terrified me. I grabbed a suitcase, my laptop, custom built for work, and bolted. But before I left, I made sure to drop the bomb. I sent the video to Marcus's wife. No fluff, no dramatic explanation, just the footage and a single line. "Your husband is cheating with my wife." Outside, I ran into my son. He's 14 now, technically her kid, but I've been his dad since he was 3. He's my boy, no matter what. I hugged him and said something I regret with every fiber of my being. "Your mom's cheating on me, so I have to leave." It wasn't fair to him, dumping that truth like a live grenade. But in that moment, I wasn't myself. I was a walking wound, oozing anger and heartbreak. The plan was to head to Canada, my hometown. But COVID had other ideas, and the border was closed. So I ended up in a dingy Airbnb, working like a zombie and dodging calls from my wife. She sent me more texts than a telemarketer on speed, but I haven't responded. The only person I've spoken to is my son, answering his questions honestly, or as honestly as you can without turning into a sobbing mess. Everyone else is in the dark, except my parents. My friends? Useless. Most of them are mutuals with her, and I'm not ready to deal with the inevitable circus that will follow if this goes public. The worst part? I'm still boiling inside. I want to confront her, scream at her, make her feel a fraction of what I'm feeling, but I can't. Not because I'm noble or above it, but because I'm scared. Scared I'll do something that lands me in prison. I can't risk losing my son, not after everything else. For now, all I know is this: I'm filing for divorce. Beyond that? No clue. All I see is red, and I don't know how to stop. I started calling my son twice a day. I figured if nothing else, I could make sure he was okay. Every time, he told me everything was fine. But I guess fine is a word people use when it's anything but. I was doing my best to keep myself together. I even started individual counseling. It helped a little, though I wouldn't call it a magic fix. What actually made a difference was boxing. The first gym I visited was rundown, with peeling paint and a lingering odor of stale sweat. But the guys there had this camaraderie that was magnetic. They laughed, ribbed each other, and carried a kind of brotherhood I hadn't realized I'd been craving. Naturally, they told me I'd have to talk to the old man before I could join. Apparently, he was the gatekeeper. The way they talked about him, you'd think he was a mix of a drill sergeant and a Zen master. Meeting him? Let's just say it was an experience. He had this way of getting under your skin without being outright rude. Everything he said was true, painfully so, but it was his tone that did it. Like every question or observation was a subtle dig, challenging you to prove you weren't worthless. Somewhere in that uncomfortable conversation, I found myself arguing with him, begging to prove I was worth his time. To this day, I can't decide if he's a jerk or a genius. Maybe both. For all his abrasiveness, though, he's been good for me. Really good. He's helped me untangle the anger, see it for what it was, and redirect it. It's a whole story in itself, but I'll save that for later. A few days after my last post, about 20 minutes after a routine call with my son, he called me back. He was crying. Through sobs, he apologized for lying to me. Everything wasn't okay. He told me my wife wasn't functioning. She spent all day staring blankly at the TV, even when he turned it off. There was no food in the house, and the place reeked. The only thing he'd eaten in 2 days was some sandwiches a friend's mom gave him. I dropped everything and rushed home. I could smell the rot from the hallway before I even unlocked the door. Inside, the place was a disaster zone. Dirty dishes piled high in the sink, garbage overflowing, broken glass on the floor. It was like the apartment had been hit by a tornado of neglect. First, I checked on my son. I'd grabbed him a burger on the way over. He hugged me and cried while I promised him that everything would be okay now, that I was here, and I wasn't leaving again. That hug? It anchored me. I missed him so much it physically hurt. No matter what else happens, I'm never leaving him again. Once he'd eaten and settled, I went to check on my wife. My son wasn't exaggerating. She was sitting on the couch, staring at the screen like she'd forgotten how to blink. But what shocked me more was her appearance. She looked skeletal, her face gaunt with sunken eyes surrounded by dark circles. Her hair was a greasy, tangled mess. Her clothes were filthy, and the stench coming off her was nauseating. A bucket of week-old vomit sat next to the couch. Despite everything, I felt an ache of pity for her. For a moment, I forgot the betrayal, forgot the anger. All I saw was the broken shell of someone I'd once loved deeply. Some part of me still does, I think, and that realization scared me. What's wrong with me? I pulled a chair between her and the TV and tried to talk to her. She barely registered my presence at first, then asked if I was real. When I told her I was, she burst into wailing sobs, so loud and raw they startled me. Before I could even process it, she passed out mid-cry. I strapped my Fitbit onto her wrist because I have no clue how to check a pulse. Her heart rate was bouncing between 110 and 160. I knew that couldn't be good. After making sure she was comfortable, I wiped her face and ran next door to ask the neighbors to watch my son. Then I took her to the hospital. She's been there for about a week now. I visited once, but she got so upset that the doctors recommended I stay away for now. They have no diagnosis yet, and no idea if or when she'll recover. Since then, I've focused on my son. He's in regular counseling, and he seems to be doing better. But there's no erasing what he's been through. I feel a crushing guilt for my part in it. Back home, cleaning was an ordeal. The fridge was so foul, even bleach couldn't fix it. I had to replace the whole thing. And then there was the bed. She'd stuffed it with my dirty laundry, shaping it into a crude, anatomically accurate version of me. That one, yeah, I'm still trying to unsee it. I also found papers scattered everywhere, filled with incoherent scribbles. Some pages had dates and times, others just long strings of sorry. Most transitioned into meaningless squiggles halfway through a sentence. The anger I once felt is gone, replaced by an aching sadness. I mourn for my son, for the stability he's lost, and for the person I used to be. For years, I prided myself on being a good husband and provider. Her betrayal destroyed that part of me. It's too painful to hold on to, so I've let it go. I don't know if I can forgive her, even if she recovers. I'm holding off on filing for divorce, but only because I don't know what the future holds. My focus is on my son now, on rebuilding a sense of normalcy for him. As for me, I'm exhausted. My path forward, once so clear, is now muddled and gray. All I can do is take it one day at a time. I'm not sleeping much these days. My brain feels like it's running on fumes, and I'm drifting through everything in a daze. If this starts to sound like rambling, well, bear with me. My wife's still in the hospital. She's not taking visitors except for her mother, and has apparently made it very clear that no one is to speak to me on her behalf or try to pressure me about anything. She's confessed the affair to everyone, but her calls aren't what you'd expect. They're frantic, full of panic. I cheated. He's going to leave me. What do I do? It's like she's screaming into the void. Because of that, most people have left me alone unless I've reached out to them for advice or help. A few days ago, her mother handed me a letter my wife had written. 32 pages long. I'm not kidding. I'll summarize the highlights, because trust me, you don't want to read 32 pages of regret and self-loathing. She apologized for everything, for what she did to me, to our son, to our family. She wrote that she'd sign anything I put in front of her, post-nup, divorce papers, whatever I needed. Then came a confession I didn't see coming. She admitted to an emotional affair with someone online 2 months before the physical affair. I had no idea this had even happened, so I believe she's being honest now. Her confession included login credentials for everything, email, social media, even her phone. She also pointed me to a thumb drive hidden in a drawer. The drive contained her diary, going back almost 10 years. It matches her letter word for word. According to her, the first affair, the online one, started as a kind of game. Flirting, no sexting, no plans to meet up. It went on for a while until one day she sent the guy a message out of the blue, realized what she was doing, and ended it immediately. She couldn't bring herself to tell me though. Apparently she tried, but not hard enough. The more recent affair was different. This time, it wasn't just ego stroking, it was like a drug for her. The guy, Marcus, is stupidly handsome, the kind of guy who could be on the cover of a magazine. And his wife? She's a knockout. A 10 out of 10, jaw-dropping goddess. My wife's ego skyrocketed when this man chose her over his stunning wife. She felt special, chosen, like she'd won some kind of twisted competition. She knew it was wrong but didn't stop. When Marcus started losing interest, she escalated. She used sex as a way to keep him hooked, even though she wrote in her diary that it felt more like a chore than something she actually wanted. The affair was physical for 4 weeks. 5 encounters, confirmed by her diary, credit card bills, and location data. It was transactional, a trade, attention for sex. Her letter ended with this. I don't know who the person was that had the affair. I don't recognize myself in those actions. I abandoned my beliefs and my morals, and I hurt the people I love most in the world. I don't know why I couldn't stop myself. I won't insult you by asking for forgiveness or understanding. I don't deserve either. My only hope is to help you and our son heal in any way I can. I'll sign anything you ask of me. I'll do anything you need, no questions asked. I've already made arrangements to stay with my mother when I'm discharged. I won't come back unless you ask me to. I'm sorry for destroying your trust and love. I hope someday you can find someone who's worthy of you. I will never be with anyone else. I'm not safe to be with. I'll go to therapy to figure out what's wrong with me, but as of now, I don't even know who I am anymore. I knew what I was doing was wrong. I knew it was hurting you, hurting myself, and hurting our son. But I did it anyway. I was selfish. I don't have the words to express how sorry I am. My greatest wish is for you to heal. I ugly cried reading that letter. I don't know how else to describe it. I've been up all night, going through her letter and diary. I've read every word, over and over again. I even went back and watched the video, both of them. Yes, that video. The one of her and Marcus, and the one of me losing my mind after I saw it. I don't know why I do it. Watching her betrayal is like tearing open a wound, but I keep going back to it. Watching myself snap? It's horrifying. I see myself as this unhinged feral thing I don't recognize. Yet, I can't stop. Is it possible, what she's saying, that someone can get pulled into an affair so compulsively it feels like they lose their free will? Or is that just an excuse to avoid taking responsibility? I've also started noticing signs of her depression in her diary, starting about 3 years ago. Her favorite aunt died, and her perspective on life took a nosedive. Everything became darker, more hopeless. Could that have triggered all of this? She claims she never loved Marcus or the guy from the emotional affair. She only loved the attention, the boost to her ego. The AP's wife confirmed some of this when I met her. She said my wife called her on D-Day, confessed everything, and cut off all contact with Marcus immediately. Of course, the AP's wife had her own agenda. She asked me if we could have a revenge affair. I kid you not. She was laser-focused on it, like that was going to solve anything. For all her beauty, she's easily the most annoying person I've ever met. Talking to her was like a nails on a chalkboard. Needless to say, that is not happening. So here I am, sleep-deprived, emotionally drained, and staring down an endless series of questions I don't have answers to. I don't know what's real anymore. Her remorse seems genuine, but so did her love before all this. I'm stuck in this loop, unable to move forward, unable to let go. All I know is I need help, because I can't keep doing this to myself. In the meantime, I'm stuck in this purgatory of questions with no answers. Reconciliation or divorce, or something in between. I don't know. I just hope I have the strength to make the right choices, for myself, for my son, and for whatever future lies ahead.